Yes, my family has a long history of persecution by the communist regime. First of all, in the very 1943, 4, 5, is immediately during and after the war, my two uncles were arrested. My grandfather was arrested as a Greek Catholic priest. All Greek Catholic priests were blamed for collaboration with the Nazis, just totally. He was forced to change his church affiliation to the Russian Orthodox. And the family remembered that violence all the time, spiritual violence all the time. And when it became possible during the Gorbachev time in 1989, we immediately returned to Greek Catholicism because it was the choice of our family. I had a long history of persecution even as a member of my family. But also to be as children, to be a pupil in a school meant to put down in all documents that my relatives are in the United States, in Australia, in France, and it meant that I immediately became suspicious because, oh, the family has contacts with foreigners in awful bourgeois countries. So it was natural for me to be suspicious even from the very young time. Later on, when I was invited to the KGB when I was a student of the Lviv Polytechnical Institute. I was said that I will be expelled from the institute because I spread anti-Soviet ideas, anti-Soviet provocational speeches and so on. Later I understood that some of my friends who lived in a dormitory with me just sent secret information to KGB about me. And the goal of this pressure on me was to make me an informer also. It's like a chain. At the beginning, I was rather afraid of that. I didn't know what to answer. I didn't want to be an informer, but I didn't know how to refuse from that. But later on, I more and more I became courageous, and actually my relations with KGB at that time ended with one last conversation when they warned me that, look, if you are not with us, you are against us. And I replied, okay, I will be against you. I would never say it now in my age, but when I was 24, 25, it was more or less okay. Well, they searched me. Actually, they controlled every step by mine. So every step. But at the same time, I understood that all my friends and all my heart is among dissidents, among people who protested against the Soviet rule. And actually I became part of that community, very small but very tender, very I would say very dear for me. And KGB understood that I'm more and more anti-Sovietic and more dangerous for them. It's a long story of different steps to my arrest, but it was very meaningful for me as some steps of my raising, how to say in proper English, of my education, let's say in this way. First of all, when I decided to refuse from being an informer, they punished me for not allowing me to go abroad. I worked as an interpreter at that time at the semiconductor plant in some city in Western Ukraine. And some collection of our products were exhibited in, I don't remember already, probably in Vienna, in Austria. But I was not allowed to go. And I was told that the reason was because I refused to. Later on, KGB made everything in order not to allow me to work. For example, I see some announcement that this or that organization needs some worker. I come, I give my documents, okay, let's start. And a few days later, oh, we are sorry, we don't have any more. I immediately understood that KGB didn't allow me to work at that or this work. Actually, I studied in Lviv Polytechnical Institute. Later, I worked at Ivano-Frankivsk, the city in Western Ukraine. And after being a soldier during 1 year, I moved to Kyiv and lived there during a few years, and actually I was arrested there. First of all, let me say that at the end of the 40s, there was rather big famine in Western Ukraine. I don't mean the big famine of 1933 in Eastern Ukraine, but it was immediately after the war. And I don't remember actually that time, but I remember that my mother told us that fried potatoes was on Sundays, was one of the best food in the family. I don't know what we ate during working days, but it's actually funny that I like fried potatoes till now. Probably it was imprinted as a best food. Of course, I didn't know the taste of sweets in my childhood. So our family was very poor, and only later, in the 60s probably, we started to live more or less bearable in the material sense. To be Ukrainian in Western Ukraine meant to be guilt for being a Ukrainian, to be a guilt for reserving or reservation, for hesitating to become a normal Soviet man, I mean Russian-speaking. You may be Ukrainian, but you have to speak Russian. If you speak Ukrainian, then there is something suspicious with you. But if you move outside of Western Ukraine, for example, when I came to Kiev, then to speak Ukrainian meant to immediately present yourself as a nationalist, as a Banderovets. It means something very, almost fascist. That's why I had such an experience that when I knew that at some organization they need specialists like me to work there, they have a vacancy for some job, I come to them, and when they hear Ukrainian language, they immediately, oh, no, thank you, we don't want. So there was a true discrimination of Ukrainian language in the former Soviet Union, compared with some permission to use Ukraine. For example, there were from time to time there were festivals of Ukrainian culture. Then it was of course allowable to use Ukrainian, but you had to sing about Communist Party, about Stalin or later Brezhnev. You have to be ideologically fitable, yes, to the official doctrine. If you are different, then you have a problem. Of course, the period of the war and immediately after the war was most difficult for Western Ukrainians, because then enormous number of people were just moved to Siberia. For the typical blame was collaboration with the Nazis. And at that time, yes, people disappeared. People were taking during the night, normally, not during the day, but during the night. There were very, very difficult family stories of that time. One of my uncles was arrested because he had the notes of Ukrainian anthem, which is now used as the national anthem of Ukraine. But he had that note in his house. But the Soviet regime considered this anthem as dangerous, as nationalistic, as non-Ukrainian, because Ukrainian, there's this Soviet Ukraine used a different anthem. And he was arrested and died in Magadan 2 years later. So it was many awful stories. It was very easy to give non-truthful information about some people and provoke KGB to arrest these persons. It was very difficult at that time. It was a little bit easier during the time of my youth, in the sense that there were no open protesters against the Soviet rule. People tried to hide their anti-Soviet feelings. Of course, they were present everywhere, those feelings everywhere. Almost all people were critical toward the Soviet rule. But it was not possible to publicly demonstrate that. So that's why till now many people have divided consciousness in the sense that we think about something, but we speak about something different. So, I remember the moment, my first conflict with the captain, the officer at my division. As you see, I have mustaches, but it was strictly forbidden to have mustache in the Soviet army, except for Georgians, yes? Why? Because Stalin was Georgian, and he remembered that for Georgians, it's a national pride for men to have a mustache. And all other nations didn't have a privilege to have national pride. So Ukrainians were not eligible to have this mustache, and it meant that the officer warned me several times that I will be punished for that, and I have to eliminate this mustache. I don't know the proper word in English. And finally, when we had to move to some place altogether, the whole unit was stopped, and the officer announced, we will be standing until Marynovich will take his mustache off. I didn't want, I refused, but then there was a collective punishment. Then all the unit, well, what do you think? What do you try to present from you? In the sense that they demanded that, my colleagues demanded that I will take mustache off, and actually I did that because it was impossible. So it was the first conflict. Of course, we used exclusively Russian. No chance to use other languages. And I was always treated as Banderovets. It means nationalist. Because, oh, you are from Western Ukraine. Oh, you are Banderovets. You are nationalist. By the way, it's a typical cliche even today, because if you read materials of Putin's administration now, you will see the same slogans. Banderovцы, nationalists, fascists, and so on and so on. So it's nothing changed in Moscow. But also no chance to have any religious activity, any religious moments in the Soviet army. In general, I would say that from certain point of view, it was even more difficult for me to be in the army than in the prison. Because in the labor camp, I was able to write protests. I had that right to write a protest to the procurator, to say that I'm persecuted, there is something wrong, and so on, so on. It was not possible for a soldier. So you're just wordless, and you had to. You had no chance to defend your rights. I remember a very interesting phrase. We, as soldiers, we worked hard without any time for rest. And when I finally couldn't take longer, and asked the officer about the rest, he said, "You want rest? You will rest in a grave only." So, and it was like a curse, something, curse, is it the correct word? Because I'm workaholic now. I cannot, I don't know how to rest. So this is to some extent a joke, but at the same time a curse. Well, the level of medical assistance was also very poor in the army, but thanks God I was rather healthy, both in the army and in the prison, so I was lucky. I was, here again there was some sort of punishment, because normally at that time in the Soviet Union, when you graduated the higher education, the universities or polytechnical institute, then you were eligible to go to the army as officers. But because I was punished as a suspicion person, I didn't want to give information about my friends, I was punished in the sense that I didn't take course of special military training during my higher education process, so I went to the army as a simple soldier during one year. So it was psychologically more difficult to be older, but serve as a simple soldier. I tried to move to Kyiv because my favorite friend worked and lived there. And in general, all of my friends were there in Kyiv. And I tried to find work there. I worked at different temporary jobs, like how to say in English. I carried some heavy products. I don't know how to explain.
So you were
in
a
English.
laborer. It was just simple manual labor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. At some point, I worked at editing houses and as editor, printing editor, something like that. It was, again, rather simple work. At the same time, parallelly, I kept relation with dissidents. I organized some Ukrainian festivals, which were half semi-forbidden in the Soviet Union. For example, Christmas carols, singing Christmas carols. It was long-term Ukrainian tradition. But it was not officially allowed, it was not criminalized, but at the same time it was not greeted by the government. So when we organized that, when we organized young people to sing Christmas carols, then police followed us and we were, so to say, careful not to drink any alcohol, because then we might be arrested and blamed for being drunk. Or some of us was taken to short-term detention due to specially organized provocations. My friend, for example, was asked by another man to give a cigarette. And when he tried to find cigarettes, he was beaten. But police immediately caught them all and blamed my friend for organizing the accident. So as you see, just to do something in order to put you to jail just for organizing carols, just for organizing this national tradition. The same was with Ivana Kupala. Ivan Kupal, I have no idea how to explain in English. Again, this is old tradition which has roots in pagan period of Ukraine. But again, there was strong control and attempts to punish us in some way. So it was the pressure from KGB became more and more intensive, and our behavior became more and more open publicly and more critical toward the Soviet ideology. The decisive moment came when I and my friend Mykola Matosevich met one woman occasionally just on the streets of Kiev, And she told us, oh, it's great that I saw you, I met you, because we are trying to organize the human rights group, the so-called Ukrainian Helsinki group. You are young, so if you want to join this group, you may come tomorrow to a certain place. That was the decisive moment because we understood that sooner or later it will mean arrest. But at the same time, we were young and we were willing to preserve self-respect, so to say. As a young man, we wanted to be really really human beings. So we decided, okay, we will join this group. So we came to the special place, the home of the head of this group, Mykola Rudenko, and started our activity at that group. It was connected with different challenges because it was very difficult to work in the group, to collect information about people persecuted in violation of Helsinki Agreement. But we understood that every paper we prepare may be searched by KGB in a secret way. Our homes were searched. It was rather difficult. But also, we announced our names and our addresses. So it was not an underground group. It was a group which announced that we do not take position in the sense of ideology. We want to defend human rights. That is. We want to defend human rights. Our declaration and the first memorandum were transmitted through Radio Voice of America, Radio Liberty, and so on, BBC and others, who transmitted to the former Soviet Union in Russian or in Ukrainian. And immediately, KGB started to control us, even in an incredible way. They followed us everywhere. I'm sorry for saying that, but even when I went to the toilet, they tried to go with me, showing me that you are under control now. Later on, after 1 month, they stopped this psychological pressure, but they used other different means. I was expelled from my job in a typical Soviet way. They proposed me to the higher position. And I knew, because it was very typical, so I wrote the request for that position, and the request to the chief to take me off from the previous position. But then they announced that this higher position is not possible anymore, but you wrote already the refusal from the previous. And, it was the end of my working history, and I couldn't find a place to. I couldn't find job for several months until almost the very end. So I didn't have money to live, and of course my relatives helped me a little bit, but it was difficult for me as a young man. We also organized some demonstration connected with a national, our national poet Taras Shevchenko. The Soviet regime couldn't put ban on this name and this and his poetry, because it was just the most dear poet for whole Ukrainians. But at the same time, these poems were considered to be too nationalistic. So the main idea of the Soviet rule was to convince the people that Shevchenko was a revolutionary of a Bolshevik style. And this was the typical, it was the nature of one event. We took part in that when officials spoke about Shevchenko in this Bolshevik style. We decided to protest, but again in a special way. I was arrested in 1977 as a member of Ukrainian Helsinki group. There was a call in the room where I was present in the morning, telegram. And when we opened the door, then about 10 or even more men entered the room, and I and my friend Mykola was arrested. During the court trial, I defended myself. I didn't want any lawyer to defend me, because all Soviet lawyers just did what was necessary for the government. There were many people in the room, courtroom, but none of my relatives and none of my friends were allowed to get in. So it was a special people which were loyal to the government were present. So on the one hand, it was an open process, but on the other hand, it was closed, of course. I received the maximum term, 7 years of imprisonment in a labor camp and 5 years of exile. Why the maximum? Because I didn't repent. I didn't consider myself guilty for anything criminal. And I was taken to the prison. I was robbed during the way because I was put to criminals criminals, not political, but natural criminals, and they took all my things, all my belongings, and it was made with special purpose because KGB wanted to punish me immediately from the very beginning. I saw all these specific features of the Soviet penitentiary system, with dogs, with brutal criminals, intimidating women who were put in a different compartment in a train. So the way to the prison was very challenging and difficult. In the prison, it was a special prison, the special labor camp for political prisoners. And there were about 60 prisoners and more than 100 guards, officers, soldiers, and so on. So we were searched very carefully. It was in Kuchino, Perm region in Russia. It's Ural Mountains. It was time which was different a bit in comparison with the Stalin time, because the Stalin time was characterized by usage of strong force, of usage of violence toward prisoners. During Brezhnev's time, they used different techniques. For example, spiritual pressure. One of my friends was told that his wife is ill and she's dying, and he has to save her daughters, small daughters. Otherwise, they will be given to special house for siroty.
Orphanage.
Orphanage, yes. And he will lose them forever. So there was a possibility for him to sign a petition that he repents his action, and he will be released. So the only thing had was to sign this petition, but he didn't want, he refused. And later he knew that everything was a total lie, that she is alive and nothing happened to his wife. So it was psychologically difficult. Frozen, cold,
Yeah.
cold, hunger. It was very typical way. It were typical ways of providing additional sufferings in Gulag. There were certain norms of keeping people in a cold room, certain limits. But of course, nobody cared about these limits. And I remember the moment when a cell where I was taken, there was a ice everywhere. It was so cold that ice. We couldn't keep resting because it was so cold. We had to move and energetically make some physical training, so to say. And we demanded that a procurator and a doctor came and checked the temperature. I had a possibility to meet my relatives once per year with a personal rendezvous. It means 1 or 2 days within a special room, or twice per year through via telephone through the glass. But all these meetings might be cancelled because of your behavior. And if KGB decided that you behave too non-negotiable, or how to say, too anti-Soviet in it, too aggressively towards Soviet rule, then they might easily deprive you of these meetings. And for example, having during 7 years, I had many opportunities to meet my relatives, but I met only 2 or 3 times. I don't remember correctly. So I was punished all the time for incorrect behavior. So they didn't give me these parcels many times, just for example, you are not correctly dressed. It is not closed. That's all. You violated the behavior in, or you didn't stand when a guard arrived. There were people in my labor camp who were bitten, but not me. So I don't have personal experience here. But I have personal experience of being in a karcer, in a punishment cell in a labor camp, too long, and the level of feeding there is less than it is needed for natural compensation of your living. You understand that, yes? You receive less calories than it's necessary for restoration of your ability to live. And after 60 days of stay in such a punishment cell, I remember that I came out very fat, but it was not because I was so nicely feeded, but because I received too little food, and just I cannot explain that. In 1 year, actually, under the trial, court interrogations and then court trial. So 6 years in concentration camp, but 7 years altogether as in imprisonment. And also I had, according to the sentence, I had 5 years of exile, and I spent 3 years of exile in Kazakhstan. in a remote village in Kazakhstan, working as a carpenter. But then in 1987, Gorbachev released about 200 political prisoners, including me. Our guilt was forgiven by the communist state, and I came back to Ukraine. At the beginning of the Ukrainian independence, during the presidency of Leonid Kravchuk, there was an attempt to pay something back. And I remember the amount of money was just funny. I didn't go to receive that money because it was nothing. It was just a new kind of humiliation. And it was my decision, my personal decision, because I hate politics. I don't like politics, especially in our part of the world. So I didn't want to become a politician, but I wanted to be important for my country in a different roles. For example, as a human rights activist later, now I work in a sphere of education. For me, it's understandable that you cannot build a new country if you have the working schemes of the country in your mind, which are old. It means you have to change your mentality. You have to change the way you act. It's especially important in the post-communist countries, because people are trained to live in a paternalistic state, waiting for somebody to transform his or her life. So you have to change that attitude. Never. I have a sense in my country, as a person. I have a sense of mission toward my country, toward my nation. It's very. I would be nobody abroad. So it's for me. I love Ukraine. I like Ukrainian. I'm proud of being Ukrainian. So no, I never wanted. I enjoy visiting other countries. It's very important for me to know how people live, to compare and try to go higher, try to develop our national abilities. But at the same time, no, I prefer to live in my country. Mm-hmm. Some friends of mine were just, how to say, expelled from the country forcefully. So I remember that there were moments when I imagined that if the government decides that I have to be expelled, then what I may do in the United States or in other countries. But it was just as a very theoretical possibility. But I never dreamed about going outside Ukraine. I will start from the very important moment in my life, which happened this year in Maidan. It's the birth of a new generation, which is not Homo Sovieticus anymore, which are different than we were in their age. these people inherited freedom very naturally. Freedom is within them. It is not the freedom of a slave who suddenly receive freedom and do not know and doesn't know what to do with that. These people know how to behave as free persons. So for me, this is just the happiness of my life. So we passed long way. This 20 or even more, 20 years of independence. It was time for many people to rethink their attitude toward life. And I may even illustrate that, if I have such a possibility, by results of voting in Ukraine at different presidential and parliamentary elections. At the beginning, only Western Ukraine was pro-democratic. The other part was still Soviet in its thinking. But then this line moved permanently toward east, and now it is eastern territories which are inflamed a bit during this crisis because of Russia, and this is the last bastion of the former Soviet thinking. I'm sure that we will manage to solve this problem. I don't know how many people choose Ukrainian or Russian side. I don't know. But I know that Ukraine will become more united after the crisis, and finally we will start to live different life. I have a tradition of looking optimistically. To be in a prison in the former Soviet Union, it was crazy to imagine that the Soviet Union will be dissolved. It was just impossible. It was a power forever. But we believed in that, and it happened. Now I'm sure that Putin's Russia will end. Russia will be forever, but not Putin's Russia. Putin's way of ruling the country is these imperialistic visions. It's outdated way of international relations proposed by Putin. It will fail. Definitely, I'm sure about that. So it's difficult for people. Many people's fates are damaged by that. But speaking philosophically about that, I'm very optimistic. It's extremely important to build and organize the museum of communist persecutions, because communist crimes are forgotten. There is a big injustice that the pain of victims of Gestapo was heard in the world. The pain of the cry of victims of NKVD was not actually heard. We know Auschwitz, we know other places. They are thoroughly organized as museums now, and people may come visit these places and understand the reality of those times. You cannot visit Kolyma, you cannot visit other places, Solovki, or no, actually there is some museum in Solovki, And there is a museum in Perm region, but now it is closed because the official explanation of this is because this museum spreads the antagonistic feelings, antagonistic ideas. So it's extremely important that such a museum is organized in the United States where people may visit and understand that time. Of course, all the generations remember, but I was shocked to hear from one young man when, after my lecture, he said, "Come on, Mr. Marynovich, are you so sure that communism was a bad thing?" So I was really shocked. I understood that our silence or our attempt to forget and build new life has something wrong in that, because silence means non-understanding.